Hello everyone and welcome back to Power Rangers Mega Battle for what is the shortest stage in the game, but also is an introduction to my favorite music the game offers. It also gives me a chance to talk about something I kind of like about the game design. So, mid-air combat may have seemed a little bit clunky based on the last video, but there is method to the madness. There are two notable genres of attack while you're in the air. There are combos, and then there are attacks where you bounce off the enemy's head. If you want to bounce off the enemy's head, you press the punch button while you're on your way down. If you want to use a combo, you press the punch button while you're on your way up. It may be hard to understand the distinction at first, but it's there. Now on to the actual enemy design present here. These flying enemies only take one single 3-hit combo, and that's actually something I would count as a positive. If they took 2 or more combos, that would be a little bit excessive, especially considering how many of them there are, and it's way more satisfying to be able to kill them in only one. And before you know it, the level is over, which is also something I would count as a positive. Hey, do you want to know a secret? This rooftop level is actually pretty decent. I mean, it's not particularly remarkable, but if I were going to recommend a level of this game to somebody, it might be this one. Yeah, I think that's accurate. If I were going to try and sell this game to someone, I would recommend this level and then the boss fight against Turbine Shell. I mean, I was going to buy the game no matter what because it's a brand new beat-em-up. But if they were going to make a demo for this thing, which they should, because all games should have demos, then that would be ideal. And one of the reasons I would recommend this level is because it gives you the impression that there's more going on in the game than there actually is. Like, this level has some platforming in it, and it might give you the impression that there's more minor platforming throughout the game in significant amounts when there isn't really. But this level might give you that impression, which is what is important. This level also has many changes in elevation, which still don't really do anything, but again, might give you the impression that there's more going on in the game than there actually is. Like I said, there's only one place in the game where I can think elevation actually does something worthwhile, and we still haven't gotten there. And this level also has hazards for you to throw the enemies into throughout its entire duration, instead of just in short bursts. I mean, yeah, they're just bottomless pits again, but that adds to the enjoyment immensely. Also, as far as I know, it is entirely possible for the enemies to break out of your grab, but they don't seem to do a very good job of it. And you'd have to do a very bad job of grappling them if you let them escape. If this game's platforming doesn't seem super good, then you shouldn't worry about it because you just respawn near where you fell without any penalty whatsoever. And that's something I can condone entirely. I'm glad they made that decision, because you have to restart from the beginning of a level when you die. And dying to platforming and having to restart from the beginning would be a little bit frustrating in this game that otherwise is not difficult in the slightest. This next fight is a really missed opportunity. They reintroduced the flying enemies, but there's only 2 of them, and you have to kill them before the rest of the enemies spawn. It's just such a waste. They should have introduced the flying enemies at the same time as the normal putties and the crow. That might actually lead to you getting hit a couple of times instead of just steamrolling everyone like always. Because unlike the normal putties and crow, you cannot just throw the flying enemies into the pits. This would lead to you actually having to think about what you're doing, but they structured it in such a way that it encourages no thought at all. And I assume that's on purpose. I mean, these enemy patterns didn't get here by coincidence. Someone had to place the enemies there that way. And it's very hard for me personally to get bored of throwing enemies into bottomless pits over and over, but I assume there is a point for normal people where that stops being entertaining. I think this is the first time we fight 2 Crystal Warriors side by side, but they're not very good at working together. The fighting style of the Crystal Warrior is actually relatively defensive. They don't relentlessly chase after you like the Black Knights do. And on top of that, only one of their attacks is any good in an offensive sense. Maybe if we had 4 of them on screen at a time, then we would be talking, and I would have stuff to say about what strategy you should use to approach them. but I don't think that ever happens, and if it does, well, I break the game by that point, so it doesn't matter. So we're at another upgrade station, and this time I buy an upgrade for our blue meter, which will be important later. And I buy a new combo. I know, right? It's a real shocker. But this combo enables us to actually use the sword for something other than tertiary attacks. But most importantly, I buy the first upgrade that will help break the game, and you'll see that in action shortly. But for now, up next is a section that I almost kind of like. I like the idea behind it, I can see what they were going for, but the enemy AI simply isn't up to snuff. There are 3 platforms separated by relatively large pits, and there are enemies with guns. So of course the implication is that the enemies with guns are supposed to shoot you across the large pits, and the large pits are supposed to make it difficult to get to those enemies to stop them from shooting you. But the enemies are just kinda stupid. They don't really seem to understand how to aim exactly. To their credit, their blasts do deal like 1/10, 1/12 of our health bar, which is something, I guess. Oh hey, it's the Black Knight, and I assume he's supposed to be kinda tricky here, but I accidentally knocked him into the pit with that new combo we bought, so he wasn't. I was gonna talk about how neat it is to have an aggressive enemy that you normally need space to dodge on such a small island, and how that would actually be kinda challenging, but then I used a new combo and he's just kinda gone. As you saw, the new combo in question is just a basic 3-hit strike for our sword. It deals a lot of damage though, and it creates way more knockback than any of our other attacks till this point. I mean, hell, you probably don't even need to throw enemies anymore, you can just knock them in with the sword. Even large enemies like the Black Knight or Crystal Warrior. Welcome to the fight against Evil Green Ranger. And to Evil Green Ranger's credit, his attack patterns aren't all that bad. It can be reasonably difficult to dodge his attacks if you aren't paying close attention. And he moves around frantically enough that he feels a lot more organic than many of the other bosses, which feel really robotic. It helps that he has the same moves you do. Now, it may not be immediately clear, but he's vulnerable only after he attacks when he just stands still for a short period. When he's not in any kind of animation and he's standing perfectly still, that's when it's safe to attack. He will counterattack right after you finish your combo, but the counterattack deals so little damage, as with all of his attacks, that it's completely useless. And if he just dealt more damage, then I could actually call him a good boss fight, because there are a lot of things I like about him. He just doesn't hurt enough. So I will be the first to admit that the first 3 minutes of this stage give the illusion of difficulty and challenge. Make no mistake, we did purchase a win button in the last level, but I decided not to use it here until we encounter the new enemy type. Is there a reason I saved it for this enemy type? Not really. Maybe I was subconsciously trying to trick myself into thinking there was a reason to do that. Like in a lot of other beat-em-ups, when you have a superpowered mode or a superpowered ability, you want to save it until you need it the most. But in this game, that's not necessary for reasons we'll get into later. So you might think the story is actually going somewhere, what with us already encountering evil Tommy and whatnot. And sure, you can say things are technically happening, but is any of it interesting or worth paying attention to? I mean, would it have been that weird just to not have a story or have simple text descriptions between levels? Or hell, even text descriptions on the loading screens? I mean, that Power Rangers game for the Super Nintendo didn't need a story, and this is about on par with that. You know what's a good sign? When you're trying to dissect a game's paper-thin story because the gameplay is so boring that you don't want to talk about it. I mean, I have no idea what I'm going to do for the second half of this game where I just break the whole thing unapologetically. Maybe it'll just be a collection of depressed sighs. So up here, I think you're supposed to destroy this barrier using the blaster and then jump across, but even if you don't use the blaster, it's fine, because the laser grid down there won't deal significant damage to matter. And oh hey, look, the hostages are back. I said they would return, but not in a meaningful context, and this is true, because this time the hostages are just right in front of you. So it's kind of literally impossible to miss them. You have to go out of your way to do so, and there's no reason to go out of your way to do so, because they're necessary to proceed. Oh yeah, I was too busy talking about the hostages, so we activated our superpower mode, which is something we bought in the last level. It enables us to do a series of really rapid strikes that can annihilate anything in our path with little effort. It slowly drains our blue meter as we use it, but the blue meter also refills based on the number of hits we get in. So yeah, it fills back up pretty quickly. And this means that you can basically go through an entire stage in your superpowered mode. There are going to be a couple lulls here and there, but the blue meter fills up quickly enough that it's not something you really need to worry about. And then there are the orbs that literally pop out of these things to give you more, too. So you can buy this superpower upgrade the very first time you level up, and you can just use it throughout the whole game with no consequences, and nothing will ever be a challenge ever. I do find it admirable to try and include things like stat progression in a beat-em-up, because that seems hard to balance, and it is. And if you don't balance it right, then shit like this happens. I mean, there's no reason I'm not using the superpower mode right now. I should be. These normal putties are more than enough to refill the super meter, and even if they weren't, it doesn't matter because it will refill soon enough anyway, and they don't deal significant damage even when the superpower isn't activated, and when the superpower is activated, enemies actually deal less damage, by the way. But enough about the depressing lack of game balance. Up ahead, there is yet another hostage. As I said, they're all right in front of you, and there's only 2 of them, so it would be impossible to miss them. If they were placed in greater numbers, I could see it being a little bit more interesting. But as this is not a non-linear stage, there's really no reason for them to be here. We can actually hide behind these generators, and the putties will be unable to attack us because they're too stupid to walk around them, really. So we effectively use the same thing they're using to power their shield as a shield. And it's great, in the sense that it's really terrible and the AI is stupid. You know, lately I've been falling into this trap. I play a lot of beat-em-ups and a lot of action games that people consider repetitive. And they might be repetitive, but I always manage to find things to say about them. And because of that, I'm always like, hey, what's the worst that could happen? I've never run out of things to say before. And that's what leads to me let's playing shit like the Disney Infinity Avengers playset, or this. And I always use the flawed reasoning like, oh, I did a Let's Play of Devil Within and Dynasty Warriors Gundam and Ken's Rage, and those games were all really long, and they were very repetitive. But then I remember the reason I wanted to Let's Play those games is because they were awesome, and I absolutely had to share them. I had to. I felt compelled to do it. You know why I'm playing Power Rangers Mega Battle? Because it's a beat-em-up. Sometimes I try to convince myself with an even more flawed argument, Like, well, you played Sid the Dummy in Deep Black, and then I immediately realized, what the hell am I talking about? Those were so bad that there was never a shortage of things to talk about. But you know what else Sid the Black Deep Dummy had? Ambition. You could feel that they wanted to be something, especially Deep Black, alright? And Hidden Invasion, and Soul Fighter, all of these games are not good. But all of them tried to be something special and fucked it up. I cannot for the life of me understand what this game was trying to be, and every time I think I have it figured out, I lose all hope that my analysis is worth anything, because it's immediately disproved by the next gameplay section. But like, I have played incredibly overwhelmingly average games before. Like, there's SpongeBob Truth or Square, and then there's shit like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game on the Super Nintendo. And I had plenty to say about those. I even enjoyed those. So what the hell is so wrong with this game, or wrong with me? It has to be that I can't understand the game design. That has to be it. That has to be the reason. I mean, oh my god, it would be better off trying to analyze Full Metal Alchemist Dual Sympathy or some shit like that. Oh, what, you didn't know that was a beat-em-up? Yeah, it is, and there are these... Welcome to the boss battle against Lord Zed. In all things considered, Lord Zed is not a bad boss fight. It's easy enough to see why they thought his pattern was a good idea. He only has one attack that's really difficult to dodge. The lasers are very easily jumped over with even a rudimentary understanding of the mechanics, but these balls he shoots actually come at you kinda fast, and you either have to move up or down rapidly or dodge through them. I tend to dodge through them, but if they manage to hit you, they stun you for quite a long time. Long enough that you lose your chance to counterattack. You might have noticed that having our super mode active isn't doing much. It doesn't enable us to deal too much extra damage to Lord Zed. In fact, we don't deal any extra damage at all. What it does do is give us a slight boost in defense, which is kinda helpful. But if you saw how little Lord Zed's health bar decreased and thought that might be a little bit unfair how slowly he's dying, that's okay. We're not actually supposed to completely take his health down. Just get it to a certain amount and then a cutscene will trigger. If you want to know when exactly is the right time to dodge the orbs he fires, I find actually walking toward them and dodging aggressively works out for me. But I suppose that's really the only attack of his that you would need any sort of a strategy or help with, because the rest are painfully easy to dodge.